Army units inflict heavy losses on armed terrorist groups in Aleppo, Hama, Homs and Daraa. President Ahmadinejad affirms that dialogue is the only way to solve the crisis in Syria. China and Russia urge the international community to find a peaceful solution for the crisis in Syria. Good afternoon, this is Yaradu Krikorian with the news in English. Units of our armed forces continued to confront and chase mercenary terrorists in several areas in Aleppo and its countryside.
In qualitative operations, the Syrian Arab Army killed dozens of terrorists near Al-Uruba sporting club in the area of Bistan al-Basha. Our armed forces targeted the hiding places of armed mercenaries, killing and wounding dozens of them. They also destroyed 6 lorries carrying armed terrorists and 5 vehicles supplied with machine guns. A terrorist group fired a mortar missile near a secondary school in Al Midan quarter in Aleppo, wounding 10 citizens. People in Al Marja quarter demonstrated against the terrorist groups, calling for kicking them out. The terrorists opened fire on the demonstrators.
In Homs, competent authorities destroyed last night a number of cars for the terrorists which were loaded with weapons and ammunition near Az-Zuhuri Mosque in Al-Qusayr city in Homs province. Sana reporter quoted a source in the province as saying that the authorities killed all the terrorists inside the cars. The source added that military engineering units dismantled 3 explosive devices planted by an armed terrorist group on Rable Az-Ziraiya road in Al-Qusayr countryside. The explosive devices weighed 50 kilograms each. Sana reporters said that authorities targeted gatherings of terrorists in Arrestan city, killing and injuring a large number of them. Army units set up an ambush for an armed terrorist group near Al-Hawaj town in Al-Ghab area. The group was terrorizing citizens and committing acts of sabotage. Sana correspondent reported that the army inflicted heavy losses on the terrorists, killing and wounding dozens of them. Authorities also targeted an armed group in Masha al-Arbain and confiscated large quantities of weapons. Competent authorities confiscated large quantities of weapons when they attacked a terrorist hideout in the town of Nawa in Daraa. Sana correspondent reported that the confiscated weapons included 3 automatic rifles and large numbers of ammunition, in addition to stolen medical equipment. All the members of the group were killed, including terrorist Ayman al-Jahmani. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad renewed his call to reform the UN and to give equal rights to all member countries. He also asserted that dialogue was the only solution of the crisis in Syria. In a press conference in New York, he asserted that national dialogue and understanding remained the only way out of the crisis. He expressed hope that all those who beat the drums of war, including the European countries and the US, should realize this fact. He asserted that foreign powers were intervening in Syria's affairs, thus creating chaos and instability in Syria for decades to come. He asserted that nobody had any right to interfere in Syria's affairs. Everybody should respect what the Syrian people decide. Syria's social texture did not allow any tribal groups to monopolize authority by force, lest this should lead to more acts of war. Russia reaffirmed that the real solution of the crisis in Syria can only be attained through dialogue and compromises, taking into consideration the interests of the Syrian people. This requires the development of the UN Security Council resolutions 2042 and 2043, the Annan Plan and the Geneva Agreement. The Russian attitude was expressed by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during the meeting of the UN Security Council concerning peace in the Middle East. Mr. Lavrov stressed that the foreign policy of Russia is based on the principle that all the people determine their own destiny themselves. Events in the Middle East and North Africa prove again the necessity of respecting the basic principles of the UN Charter, including the respect of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of each country without intervening in its internal affairs and desisting from the use of force or threats. The method of the countries which support armed opposition in Syria is not only unrealistic, but it also ignores the acts of terrorism repeatedly utilized by the armed opposition. Armed foreign intervention is a grave threat to regional security and has dire consequences. Mr. Lavrov asserted that the terrorists should be rebuffed by the international community everywhere in Libya, Iraq, Yemen and Syria. There should be no place for double standards. China called upon the international community to find a political solution for the crisis in Syria and warned of dire consequences of this crisis on the whole region. The Chinese attitude was expressed by Foreign Minister Yang Jiechi in his address to the UN Security Council. He asserted that China carried out its commitments faithfully and behaved as a positive force through continuous efforts to solve the crisis in a just and peaceful way. He pointed out the necessity of supporting the UN envoy to Syria, Mr. Al-Ikhbariya, to play a neutral role and to carry out the relevant Security Council resolutions, including Annan's Plan and the Geneva Agreement. He also pointed out that the lack of a solution raises concern about Syria's future and destiny and over peace and stability in the Middle East. For their part, ministers of the BRICS group called for finding a peaceful solution to the crisis in Syria. They also voiced the rejection of any foreign interference in Syria's internal affairs. During the meeting in New York on the sideline of the UN General Assembly meetings, the ministers expressed concern the deterioration of human situation in Syria because of escalating violence. Czech Foreign Minister Karl Schwarzenberg asserted that armed terrorist groups in Syria were receiving large amounts of money and supplies from countries such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. He added that his country did not believe that Western countries must not arm these terrorist groups. Czech news agency quoted the minister as saying in an interview in the cable affiliated with U.S. Foreign Policy magazine that the situation seems more difficult in Syria because the Syrian opposition is made up of different factions funded by foreign countries to perform different tasks. The Syrian Al-Ikhbariya TV was hijacked today, where irrelevant images were broadcast for about a minute and a half by hostile sides. The channel's director, Imad Sara, said that a broadcast packet entered the channel's frequency for about a minute and a half before the administration contacted the technical team for putting broadcast back on track. He added that the channel's administration is now communicating with the relevant authorities to identify those who hacked the channel. The Syrian national TV channels undergo many hostile attempts to prevent them from reaching the public opinion, the most recent of which was the decision of Nilesat and Arabsat companies to block the channels from the orbits of the two satellites in response to the Arab League decision. With this, we end our bulletin for today. For more information about Syria and the region and to view the bulletin again, you can visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Up next, the latest business and market news with Khalid Sakabani after the break.